Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we assist fathers in sorting out their divorce and creating an amazing life for themselves and for their children. My name is Jude Sandoval. I am your host. Thanks for being with me today. I've got a very interesting and rather personal, close to home topic today. That is the insidious Covert Narcissist. But before we get into that, before we talk about that, I wanted to share with everybody. This has been a really challenging week for me, and I don't say that to gain sympathy, but just to try to connect and let you know if you're going through something this week, if you're tuning in, that there's other people. I just got off our meetup group, and there's several men sharing that same sentiment, that it's been a little bit of a challenging week for them and that they're feeling down. And I've felt that as well, too, this week. And so if you're going through a challenging one this week, or it's been an ongoing one, I know this year has kind of been a little bit challenging in general, but just know there's other people there going through it, too. And connect with us. Connect on the meetup. It's a free resource, and we've been getting a great turnout. If you have the means, jump on to the free 30-minute consult with me at divorcedads.com, thedivorcedadvocate.com, and click on the schedule/contact tab, and you'll just sync right into my calendar, and let's just talk for 30 minutes. Sometimes I'll just share a little secret with you as well. It helps me as much, if not more, as it does any of my clients that I'm chatting with and working with as well. Because I'll tell you what, I'm 8 years down the road in my divorce, but there's always things that are coming up, and there's always things for me to work on, and I am doing the work and tuning into that. So on that note, let's talk about the insidious covert narcissist. And the reason this is so personal for me is a couple of reasons. One, I grew up with a mother who was narcissistic, and we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between narcissistic traits. Just talking, we hear, oh, he's narcissistic, or you tune into any of these Hollywood movies that are on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and it seems like there's a male character that's narcissistic, right, everywhere. And while I'll venture to say that in real life, I think there are as many narcissistic women as there are men. It's just not portrayed in Hollywood. But let's not go down to my thoughts on Hollywood at the moment. But you hear this bantered around narcissism. He's narcissistic. She's narcissistic. You Google stuff, and it's 10 signs that you're dating a narcissist, how to cope with the. So we get this a lot. And I have a couple of goals today in talking about covert narcissism. And one is to share something that's more deep, and that's the narcissistic personality disorder. That would be something that gets clinically diagnosed, and it has much deeper and more, I would say dangerous, abusive potential in being involved with somebody that has a disordered personality, just like any other type of disordered personality. So we're going to dive into the whole narcissistic thing a little bit deeper than just the topical traits. And we're going to talk about this covert narcissism, which is different than the overt narcissist. So the overt narcissist, I think you're probably all familiar with. It's that person that's easy to spot in the room. They're very exaggerated, boisterous, loud, talking about themselves. We may have accidentally dated one at some time, or we have a coworker that is like that, unfortunately. But I think we can all pretty much identify that person and what that narcissism may look like. And they're easier to avoid, even if you get exposed to them for a short period of time. But, is there potentially somebody else that has these same exaggerated motivations for admiration, importance, etc., that is much harder to identify? And the answer to that is yes. The covert or covert narcissist. And so let's just define briefly first what narcissism is. And it's regularly used for, and I've got a lot of notes here. So if you hear me pausing to check the notes while listening to the podcast, bear with me, because I want to get this right. Number one, it's really important. And there's a lot of information on this, and it's very detailed, and it's important to convey in the proper manner. But, narcissism, it's a term regularly used to describe anyone who seems a bit self-involved. Now, I would say that that's just a trait, right? That's not getting into it specifically. But let's talk about the specific traits. They find it difficult to build or maintain connections with others because of their manipulative tendencies and a lack of empathy. And those two things are very key, whether it's an overt narcissist or a covert narcissist, that they have manipulative tendencies and a lack of empathy. So what are some of the elements of narcissism? I'm just going to read a list here. 1, having a sense of self-importance or grandiosity. 2, experiencing fantasies about being influential, famous, or important. 3, exaggerating their abilities, talents, and accomplishments. 4, craving admiration and acknowledgement. 5, being preoccupied with beauty, love, power, or success. 6, having one. And 9, lacking empathy towards others. So how does the covert narcissism differ from the overt? In psychology, different behaviors can be described as overt, covert. Like I said, coverts are those that are going to be more subtle. They're going to be a little less obvious. And now, it's not that what their need is in the narcissists, that's hard to say fast. In the narcissist's disordered thinking isn't the same, because the overt and the covert want the same thing. That's that whole list of traits of wants and needs that they need to be fulfilling. It's just how they go about accomplishing, gaining those needs for themselves. And the overt will do it very, very boisterously, in a very boisterous manner, in a very in-your-face manner, and it's readily identifiable. Now, the covert is going to be doing it in a lot more subtle way, and in the best way I've heard this described is as an example is you might be listening to some music, and you can be listening to it on high volume, or you can be listening to it on low volume. However, the music stays the same, right? So high volume is the covert narcissist, high volume is the overt narcissist, low volume is the covert narcissist, but the need and what's happening and what they're manipulating and what they're doing stays the same. That song stays the same. So just be aware of that. That covert doesn't mean that it's any less insidious. And in fact, I would venture to say that this is much more challenging to identify. It has been for me. I grew up with a narcissist mother, and I've had multiple narcissistic partners, and I am just coming to the real learning and understanding of all of this. And that's one of the reasons I've struggled this week. This has been really hitting me hard in learning and identifying and understanding, and just going through these ahas of, oh, wow, this is why this recent relationship just didn't work. And, oh, that's why the last one didn't work. And, oh, that's why my marriage didn't work. And, oh, that stems from my relationship with my parents and specifically my mother growing up, and just working through this and understanding this, and now starting to write about it and sharing it today. I think it's incredibly important, because it is something that flies under the radar, and it is very, very abusive, especially if you are in a relationship with somebody who is on the spectrum, and we're going to talk about there's the spectrum, the overt to the covert, and in order to be clinically diagnosed with this, you need to exemplify or exhibit a certain number of these traits. But here's the thing with narcissists, whether they're male or female, is getting a narcissist into therapy to actually talk about this stuff is unbelievably challenging, because they do not think that they have a problem, because they are not, there's nothing wrong with them. They do not have a problem. It's always somebody else. It's always you. It's always the world around them, etc. So getting them in is very difficult, and this was one of my ahas. It was difficult with my ex. It's been difficult with other relationships I had with my mother. Impossible. So that is a huge sign, is a resistance to go. And if you do, and so I'm getting a little off track here, but this is just some practical advice I want to put out there. If you do go and you think that your partner has this disorder, then make sure that the therapist knows and understands how this works, because not all therapists know everything about everything. And this is kind of a small, they say 5 to 6%. I'd venture to say that it's a much higher than 5 to 6% of the population that has this or could be clinically diagnosed with this disorder. But so it makes it more of a specialty with therapists, because what can happen with the narcissistic personality disorder, these people are very, very good at manipulating, and they can, with an unsuspecting therapist, do their manipulation on them and with them, and then you start making yourself feel crazy. And I had one of my ahas is I had a therapist with my ex that we went through that, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's just, we're doing nothing here. None of this is effective. And now I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand how the manipulation was working, but looking back now, I see that the therapist just was not cognizant of and tuning into, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was just trying to make our marriage better, trying to figure something out and go forward. So that's a really important tip. Make sure the therapist knows, or at least you identify it in therapy, talk about it, bring it up, so that therapists can look and talk about it. So let's talk about overt, covert. Coverts tend to be more introverted. So they're not showing up big. They're not the life of the party. Introverted often need their time alone and their space. They can, let's see what else. The traits of the overt narcissist and the covert narcissist are all the same. So yeah, I just talked about all that. Give me a sec here to check some more of my notes. Okay, so this is important. So we talked about the traits. We talked about the fact that what they're seeking is the same, whether you're overt or covert, but both of them have deficits in their capacity to regulate their self-esteem. And so this was a big one for me, because what I've come to learn in reading more about this is that this stems from the narcissist's inability to have their needs met as a small child. So they've developed these ways in order to get their needs met, which in childhood helped to protect them, but in adulthood now has created havoc and difficulty in being able to function in relationships. And it is based in a feeling of toxic shame on their part. So what they are doing is they are avoiding at all costs feeling shame. So they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, they will do anything to manipulate, to keep at bay having those feelings and being able to regulate that self-esteem. And when you think about it from that perspective, if you know anybody, if you're in a relationship with anybody, and I just got out of one with somebody, it is so incredibly sad to know and to think about the fact that somebody feels so much pain inside of them, that they feel this shame and devalued and just not being a good person. And shame, I'll go off on a little tangent here too. Shame is different than feeling bad about or guilty about something. Shame is a belief that you are inherently bad. Guilty is feeling bad about something or a behavior that you may have taken that you thought was incorrect. Shame goes to the core of who you are. Guilt goes to a behavior that you don't think is right. And people who are filled with this toxic shame just feel that they are bad. And so doing everything and anything they can to push this down, including manipulating you, not being able to empathize with you, having these delusions of grandeur, all of these traits are disordered thoughts that they have unconsciously created in their mind in order to keep this down, in order to protect themselves as children. Now it's manifesting in a terrible, terrible way in your relationship, in our relationships, with their other relationships, whatever they may be. So it helps me in approaching it from that perspective when thinking about these individuals, because we get it bantered around they're narcissists or they're a terrible person and they're doing this, and it is true, their behaviors are very poor and there's not an excuse for those behaviors, but we can have some empathy around these individuals. And if you have a spouse or you have an ex that is like this, then maybe that helps you to approach things from maybe a more compassionate, more empathetic place. Not that it's necessarily going to help. I can tell you in my circumstance, it's still a challenge, as empathetic as I am, as much as I know about this. So anyway, so you know, many people, you may fall victim to the behaviors of the covert narcissist without even knowing it. You may have gotten in a relationship. Oftentimes people are in a long-term relationship with them, and then they just realize that, oh my gosh, it's just, there's no sense of partnership, or there's no reciprocity in this relationship, and you're already in the relationship. So those are some signs. Or those are some traits of the overt and covert. So now let's talk about signs to look for in your relationship with somebody that you may think has narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm just going to call it NPD. It makes it easier than saying that whole big narcissistic personality disorder. But signs to look for. There's some general traits and patterns in every interaction, okay? And knowing and understanding these signs is going to help you better. It's going to help you recognize, but it's also going to help you better navigate your interactions with them, because we're going to talk about after the signs, what you do and how you do it. And how you mitigate those interactions. So one is a passive self-importance. They might give you backhanded compliments or purposely minimize their accomplishments and talents so that you will be continually reassuring them of their self-worth, right? So they have a fragile sense of self, so they're needing this continual validation. They're gonna in where the overt narcissist is going to be demanding attention, right? They're going to be out, look at me. The narcissist is going to use, or the covert narcissist is going to use very much softer approach to that. They're going to be constantly seeking reassurance about their talents, their skills, accomplishments, and just looking to feed that self-importance. So like I said, it might be just giving you backhanded compliments. Like, they can't compliment, right? Because it's not focused on them. So that's a sign, is they can't compliment you because they're never thinking about you, right? They're thinking about what their needs are and what they can get. And then, minimizing their accomplishments so that you can say, oh, hey, no, that's great. You've really worked hard. I'm so proud of you, or you do this, or you're deserving of that, or this or that, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's a passive self-importance. Other sign to look for is blaming and shaming. This is a huge one, and they are notorious for this, and they're very good at it, almost to the point where it can make you crazy. So, the overt, again, is going to be obvious, where he might be rude to you, talk down to you, be demeaning to you, critical, and you can see it a mile away, right? And people all around you can see it a mile away. The covert narcissist is going to be much more gentle in their approach, and they're gonna explain why something is your fault and they are not to blame, and they might even pretend to be a victim of your behavior. Now, I've experienced this one a ton, pretending that they're a victim of your behavior. So this looks like they do something or they behave in a manner so egregious and they take no responsibility. They may gaslight you about it, saying, oh, I don't remember it that way, or that's not what happened, or just to the point where you're about to lose your mind. You get so frustrated, you might blow up and scream and yell, and then they go, well, see, that's how you're acting, and that's the problem, and this is what's going on, and this is why this is not working, or et cetera. They're notorious for doing blaming, shaming, and turning it around on you. And you're like, what? What the heck? Wait, what just happened? We're talking about what you did. Why are we talking about what I did now? Because you're stalling, or you're blaming, or you're shifting, or you're deflecting, or whatever manipulation that you're doing. So the other thing that they will do, this is another sign, is they will engage in emotional abuse in order to put themselves in a position to garner praise or reassurance or help from you. So this looks like they get into some kind of situation, let's say with a family member, to where it is an emotionally abusive situation, and then they come to you with it, and then you're there to try to help make them feel better, to support them, and give them the need that they have of this attention. That's another classic sign. Now, another one is creating confusion. I just touched on this with the blame and shame, but they'll create confusion. Gaslighting is mentally and emotionally abusive, and it makes you they try to make you crazy. They'll it causes you to question your perceptions, second guess yourself. If they can get you to question your perception, then this allows them the opportunity to manipulate and exploit you. And this will sound like something along the lines of, well, I don't remember it that way, or no, that's not what happened, or I never said this. That's all gaslighting, when you fully know and absolutely are able to say, that is true. And I've gone so far in my last relationship to pull up text messages, to verify phone records, to see and to call out these behaviors, to specifically, and it was mostly just to validate my feelings, because it got to the point where, like, am I crazy? Really? I don't remember that. I remember it quite clearly, and it was not like that. So let's go back. Let's look at that. And I'm not saying you need to do that, but if you need to do that in order to keep your mental health and say, oh, okay, this is how I remember it, let me validate it. Another really good thing is, if you think you're in a relationship with somebody that exhibits this disordered thinking pattern, journal, write down details of what has happened and what's going on, because that helps you to go back and say, hey, I wrote about that, and I'm going to go back and see what my journal says about. I'm a fan of journaling anyway, but I can go back and I've been able to do that many times and go back and say, yeah, this is exactly the conversation I wrote about this in my journal, and I'm pretty clear that I wasn't hallucinating at the time, and I didn't go back and remake this. So that's a really good way to help you keep your mental health, and we'll talk about a little bit, like I said, a little bit later about what you can do. Another sign, procrastination and disregard. And they are absolute pros at not acknowledging you at all, right? So making you feel little to nothing and very small. And they're drawn to people that are caring and compassionate, which is the other very difficult, challenging thing about this is they can get more of what they call a narcissistic supply from people such as myself and others that are very compassionate about things, because they're always thinking, oh, this is so terrible. Like, I want to help them out. I want to make them feel better. And so if you're an empathetic person, if you're caring, if you're compassionate, which I think the majority of people in the world are, then you'll beware, because you are a prime candidate for a narcissist to look for their narcissistic supply. So this looks like this procrastination, disregard. They might stand you up on a date. They might wait until the last minute to respond to one of your texts. They'll always show up late for events with you. They'll never confirm plans with you. This all of it is demonstrating no regard for you, for your time, for your interests, and the goal is to make you feel small, unimportant, and irrelevant, because then that will make them feel their status feel higher. I know it's totally messed up, but they are fantastic at that. I've got stories, and I'm not going to bore you with them today. The next one is, and this is a really, really important one, I feel, and it's being emotionally neglectful. This is the lacking empathy part of it. They have no ability to tune in to anybody else's feelings. And again, this is the disordered thought process, and all of this has happened automatically, subconsciously, at a very young age. That's just been carried over to this point, but they cannot tune in to your feelings. So while the covert narcissist may appear kinder and gentler and not as obnoxious, they're still not emotionally emotionally accessible, or they're not responsible either. Okay, or responsive either to your feelings and emotions. You're going to find that you are going to do the majority of the emotional and mental heavy lifting in a relationship. And although the covert narcissist might be receptive or might seem like they're somebody that is open to this, it's not going to be genuine. It's going to be that they're going to listen to you, might talk with you about it. They may even agree with you about what your feelings are and what it is going forward, but they're always going to do it with the intent to exploit you and then eventually leave you feeling small. An example of this was in my last relationship. I would have the conversations around my feelings and how I felt about a situation, and then go forward using the nonviolent communication steps of how I feel, identifying the situation, how I feel about the situation, what I'd like to see going forward, and coming up with a resolution that's going to meet my needs and the needs of the relationship. And would go through this and would have a full agreement, and then have it be completely disregarded, absolutely disregarded. And then the next step would be, like I said, the gaslighting, when I bring it up the next time and say, well, we talked about this and you're doing the exact same thing. And then I get well, I don't remember the conversation that way, or we didn't agree on that, or whatever. And and then you get furious, right? So the next step, you're getting furious. Like, I talked about this. What the heck? What's going on? And then, oh, see, you're getting upset, and you always get upset, and you get too crazy, and I can't talk to you, blah, blah, blah. See, that's like that it's like a progressive thing. It's manipulative, and it's insidious, and it's mentally and emotionally abusive. And that's the big thing. That is the problem, is because this lack of empathy, because then they have no empathy around it. They're like, they don't care. They don't care that you're going crazy about it. They don't care that they've hurt your feelings, and that is mentally and emotionally abusive. And so, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in a relationship with that. So let's see. The last part of that, one of the hallmark traits is a lack of empathy. They're not going to be emotionally responsive to your partner in a healthy way. So absolutely. And they're going to disregard, they're going to blame, they're going to shame. So let's see. The last one here is giving with a goal. Okay. So if you're fortunate enough to be with one that a covert narcissist that will potentially try to make an effort in the relationship, at least seemingly, just understand is their behaviors only demonstrated with the intent of getting something in return. This isn't to make you feel better. This isn't tuning into your feelings and then trying to find a way in order to meet the needs that you've asked for. It is simply doing something in order for them to get something in return. And it's going to be more about them and less about you and what your feelings are and how it can better the relationship. So those are all, and I'm just going to quickly go through because those are a lot of traits. I want to quickly just review those with you. Signs to look for: passive self-importance, blaming and shaming, creating confusion or gaslighting, procrastination and disregard, emotionally neglectful, and giving with a goal. So those are all classic things to look for. Now, what do? This is a tough one because in all that I have read, the ability for somebody that has this disordered thinking process that has been programmed into their subconscious from a very young age has a lot of work to do in reprogramming their mind to get in touch with their feelings. So what they are going to have to do, because they've had to create this process in order to get their needs met themselves, and then push down all the shame they have in themselves that keep coming up about them being bad people, and then have created all these manipulations and lies and all of these ways that they behave. It is a very long and challenging process to just, number one, for them to start getting in tune with how they're feeling, and then do the work towards getting rid of the toxic shame, and then learning how to relate to other people's feelings, and then learning some real basic relationship skills like how to communicate effectively. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, just know if it's your ex, if you're in one right now, that it's going to be an immense challenge. You may want to try to do this, but you need to make sure to, try to avoid taking it personally. So again, if you look at this from the perspective of this person has created this disordered thinking subconsciously because of a childhood trauma from a very long time ago, and this is automatically how they think. They're not being malicious they're waking up this morning and saying, hey, how can I just really make Jude's life miserable today? But they're just reacting in a way that is a disordered, crazy way to be thinking. And you and I can look at that and say that's just doesn't make sense. And 94% of the population can look at it and that is healthy and doesn't have this disorder and say that is crazy. That doesn't make sense. But they don't see it and they can't figure it out. So try not to take it personally, because although it hurts like heck, it hurts a ton, because they are disregarding your feelings and needs, and that never feels good to anybody. But if you can try to keep the perspective and step back and look at it and try not to take it personally, that would be good. That doesn't mean that they don't need to be responsible for their own part in what's going on. And that leads us to the next part, which is setting boundaries. Now, if you've been in a relationship with somebody with NPD, this may be hard to do now because they've broken so many boundaries and you've let them get away with it for so long. Now, maybe if you're going through your divorce, this is a good time for you to really think about going forward. How do I want to set my boundaries and co-parent with my soon-to-be ex, so I can start setting these boundaries? And that might be in setting up the divorce decree in a way that you feel comfortable with parenting time or vacations or whatever that may be. But set the boundaries because, again, they have a lack of empathy and they are entitled. They have a strong sense of entitlement. They're going to exploit anything. And the boundary is something that will get in the way of their goal. So if you are setting boundaries, they're not going to like this, but it is key and it's critical for you, because what it's letting you do is it's letting you show them what your values are and what you believe. So you need to consider what's important to you, what it is, what your values are, and what you want, and then create those boundaries with the narcissist. Now, this might look like, and this is one, when they're showing up late. And I've had this conversation before, which is, you showed up late, and to me that is a sign that you don't value my time, and I would like to spend more time with you, but I need for you to show up and show an appreciation and respect for my time. And if we can do that, I'd love that. Let's go forward. If not, and so that's a boundary. And know that if they break that boundary and you have the conversation with them again, first get agreement, like get buy-in, and if that's fine, that's good. The next time they do it, bring it up and talk about it. And that's always the key thing too, is don't ignore this stuff, because if you ignore this stuff, and this goes for anything, I did the podcast about there's no such thing as a dragon. So don't ignore stuff. Have the conversation and do it in an effective and rational and at a good time and in an appropriate manner. But don't let it slide. Number 3, advocate for yourself. Now, again, this is an opportunity for you to tune back into yourself, get to know, if you don't already, what is important to you, what your needs are, what you feel. Strengthen that relationship with yourself, because that's going to allow you to be able to speak up in the relationship. So I actually jumped ahead and talked about that. And then the narcissist gets a chance to see, okay, wow, this person is aware, and you're calling this out, and this is not behaviors that you're okay with because it goes against what your values are. So, it makes it more challenging and less appealing for them to do that. Doesn't mean that they're not going to do it, but at least it's out there, right? You are setting the boundaries, you're advocating for yourself and on behalf of yourself. And so they are aware of it. There's no excuses. It's brought to the conscious level, right? If it's not brought to the conscious level, then you can only blame partially yourself, because you're not bringing awareness to it. But now you've brought awareness to it, it's there, it's in their face, and they have now the choice as to what they decide they want to do. And then you have the choice of how you're going to react to it, right? Lastly, create a healthy distance. Now, this one can be challenging because, like I said in the beginning, you may be in a relationship with them. Maybe this is your ex, and this is a good thing, right? And it's probably one of the reasons you might be like it was for me, that you're getting a divorce, right? It's just not going to work, and it may never work, because this is a very challenging thing for somebody with this disordered thinking to figure out. And some people will, because of drastic circumstances. Maybe a divorce will help them figure that out, but oftentimes it won't be. So creating distance for you is going to depend upon the relationship. If it's a coworker, then maybe you can just avoid them as much as possible. If it's your co-parenting, then again, implement these steps. But maybe you're not maybe you're not having holidays together, and maybe you're not all sharing some kumbaya time together with the kids, and you're keeping it more separate in order to make sure that you are staying healthy yourself. So those are the 4 steps. Now I'm going to review those again very quickly, what to do. Try to avoid taking it personally if you're dealing with somebody with NPD, especially the covert NPD. Set your boundaries, advocate for yourself, and then create a healthy distance. So, wow, that was a lot of information. We went a little bit long this week, but it is incredibly, incredibly important stuff. And I would love to hear information from you, feedback from you in the comments. Send me an email about any experiences that you might have with this. I read something that said 65% of narcissistic personality disorder is diagnosed in men, and I would hesitate that number is completely skewed. Number one, because you probably get more men pulled in by women into couples therapy that then are identified with NPD, as you do the other way around, where you pull the spouse in and the wife is identified with narcissistic personality disorder. So I would venture, and this is just speculative, that's more along the lines of 50-50 out there, and especially in the stories that I hear on a daily basis, weekly basis with many of the men that I work with. So I'd love to hear from you on that. Again, if you can help me out, I do not do social media, so the Facebook, any of that stuff, I don't do any of that. I just don't think that it's a healthy place for discourse. So if you can help me and share any of my information, this podcast, or if you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe and share it on YouTube. Give me a review on any one of the podcast platforms. That would help me absolutely a ton, and I would appreciate it. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Connect with me there. I do publish the articles, the podcasts on there, as well as on ThinkSpot. And if you haven't been on ThinkSpot, this is a great alternative to YouTube, as well as Twitter and some other of the social media platforms. It is completely open. They are not taking people's stuff down. They're not reviewing stuff. They're not biased towards anybody. It is a completely open platform and forum, which I think is a phenomenal thing because we're lacking discourse anymore. So check out ThinkSpot as well. I'm on there also. And thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. If I can help, again, jump on the meetups. Those are a great free resource. I'll have those in the show notes. And then once a quarter, free 30 minutes, we can chat about anything that you might have going on. I know the holidays get challenging and stressful, so let's connect and chat. Thanks for being here. Have an awesome one. Take care.